All right, and welcome back to Matrix Breakers. I have an exciting episode here with Ricardo Zeevaert. He is one of my best friends. We have awesome discussions all the time about astrology and the culture and some of the news topics that are crazy today. So, really just wanted to get into all of these details and allow him to have a platform to share some of his insightful thoughts on the astrology, where things are kind of headed in his world, to see how we as individuals can take advantage of this new era and these great changes that are happening. So, what's going on with you, Ricky?
Yo, what's good, Dylan? Hi, my name is Ricardo Zeevaert. Everyone calls me Ricky, and I've been practicing astrology for coming up to 17 years now, here for 2025. And like Dylan just said, we go back and forth through the banter on the spiritual procliminaries of how life and society, government, geopolitics is going on. And from an astrologer's point of view, although I get to be really blessed in the intricacies of the individual, it's really awesome to talk like someone with Dylan about the more like geopolitical, like what's happening on a mass scale, where I kind of get some of my own education, not only picking up the pieces from what Dylan's sharing and what we're collaborating on in the conversation, but it gives me a huge insight on just how to understand, like, wow, some of these transits within world history. I know Dylan's such a history buff himself. So we just have some of the most exciting, delightful, and intellectual conversations. So real blessed to be here with you, man. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. I think it's important to understand the levels of which we discussed on the podcast before, but the magnitude of influence that these astrological objects have on individuals based on their chart, and then also based on the collective, and even to the extent of countries itself, right? Because everything has a birth date, right? Some things have an end date already in history. Think of the Roman Empire and stuff like that. But yeah, we discuss these things in reference a lot to history, and during eras or time periods where something astrologically might look similarly. And we discuss, well, what happened then and how does that relate to now? So we've definitely gone into that stuff, and I think I would call Ricky also kind of a historian in the sense that he looks back and the time wheel of what that what things have unfolded in the past, and then how the influences of various astrological alignments had during those time periods. So it's a really interesting topic of conversation, and I think to get into really what we're wanting to talk about today, I mean, if you wanted to brief us on what is going on right now, or at least in this new age that we're entering into.
Yeah, 100% Dylan. So for today, literally today, we're on a full moon in Leo. So kind of cool to just come out and shine out and do a whole expression where you're doing a podcast for people. So there's a lot of ways how that can intellectually kind of connect with like not only the information we're going to be talking about, but just like today's energy and maybe the topics and everything in there. I do want to do a shout out though that if you want to catch on YouTube, me and Dylan did a breakdown of the Pluto return for America with a good friend, and her channel, Willow's Bloom. And on that, we actually did a pretty deep decoding on certain dates, concluding to the Federal Reserve for America, the birth of the Declaration of Independence. And those specific times have their own astrological signature, and they get connected in every other part in America's journey, as such, with any other human, business, country, time periods that connect to one another. And so,
Mm-hmm.
for context, while we did that kind of diagnosis, we're kind of looking at what's really going on here in 2025, because there's an extreme major change on cycles that are happening, at least in the outer planets, the outer sphere, that change every about 16 to 20 years. But when we really look at some of the cycles, specifically, the planet Pluto has now shifted into the sign of Aquarius. Now, just for those that don't know, this happened about 248 years ago. So if you do the math, we're talking 1777, right after the American Revolution, so to speak. So I know I've picked Dylan's brain back and forth, like, yo, what happened in that time? What was going on with America and those trades? And like, there's so much content that could have been spoken to, or uncovered, or how really was it aspected in our day-to-day lives. But I think it's really fascinating to see, especially with America's new president and some of these crazy radical new things that have all taken place in the last month. It's almost in perfect matrimony to the time when this planet has officially shifted in the sign of Aquarius. So, I mean, we can do a whole breakdown on that, of course. I know there's probably a million details to pick from, but I think there's also a level of one, just kind of being able to speak about this energy and speak about some of the new changes that have happened, that have taken place, but also how the individual, what I hope to give at the end of this podcast with you, Dylan, is kind of the clues of how people can really look at this. Because the biggest thing I want to say is I look at astrology as an objective practice. This is where the planets have their own attribute to how society and us as human beings, or however we're co-creating, that's what kind of gets manifested. So some people I don't really have too much judgment in some ways on how certain things have taken place. I mean, I have opinions, of course, but I think it helps, take out a little bit of the edginess on the way people's opinions have been skewed, because I've been looking at everything since 2020 with the COVID, the drop of 2020 and the lockdowns. I've been looking at the sequence of events from the last 17 years of my life, man. So, we can drop into anything here.
Yeah,
So
and to
excited.
yeah, I mean, just to kind of clarify for people, there's a big shift happening, obviously, on a political and worldly scale. It feels like they've talked about the golden age, right? And different things. And you're looking at a lot of transparency within government and government institutions. And remember, we think of the United States, we might be in an echo chamber in the United States, but we have to recognize also that the United States leads the entire world. And when people look at us, they look to us as leaders. We lead the free world, essentially. And when we see a level of corruption and what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, depravity, or just lack of accountability. Find a word for
Mm,
that.
hmm
That's being revealed right now, and
Oh yeah.
the reaction to it is to try to attack the auditor or the person doing the revealing rather than the actual substance of what's being revealed. So it's an interesting time. Like, how would you say astrologically that relates to what we're experiencing? Because I mean, this is happening on a mass scale. I don't think in
Whew.
history we've seen, because of the digital information age nowadays, with Elon buying Twitter and then trying to free that up into like more free flowing information and not as much censorship, if you will. We're being released from that, and a lot of this data is coming out about everything that's been going on. It's just kind of confusing. People are distraught by it. Yeah, like, what would you say
hmm
is that alignment that's like more or less, creating that transparency?
Love, love, love the question. I'm going to do my best to do this in two pieces, basically. And I just want to state this again, previously to what I said. This is my own opinion. So, whatever stakes and political opinions, I know Dylan has a certain audience in ways, but at the same time, I just want to speak that, like, this is objective of how I see the astrology and how many astrologers have interpreted this. The first note I want to speak to is it's the last two planets, Neptune and Pluto. And I speak to those because they are the ones that move collective societies. They're the ones that transform the way cultures go. Let's just say there's thousands, if not millions, of lives happening within those cycles, being born and passing. So we are affected in the big school of fish in those transits. The Pluto came into Capricorn in 2008. What this means is that it has shifted, moving very slow, and it hit the sign of Capricorn. And this is relevant because this is the sign before of where it just entered. And it has been there since 2008, all the way to this end of 2024 into 2025, completing its complete cycle. So you can look up all the information of things that have happened between 2008 to 2024 are completely relevant into what has happened in this time. I'm not saying there's other aspects that haven't, but I'm just saying that is the big soup of what you want to learn. Now, let's talk about this really briefly, is that the planet Pluto represents a whole category of things, but the number one thing I will say is that it breathes anything that's corrupted or dead or not ripe anymore, and it's trying to rot, decay that energy to bring it back into fresh new soil, to rebirth the process, so to speak. This can happen on a psychological level if someone's experienced some trauma. This can happen on a societal plane if it's like something that's just out of date and just needs to be reconstructed and upgraded. Now, when it comes into the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn is representative of your government, your infrastructure, your highway systems, your banking systems. It is very much the planner, the big builder in the hierarchy of life. You know, if you've worked your way up and you're a billionaire, you're part of our Capricorn society on what it is to be proper, tailored, and show up and have a good career to win, if you will, the favor of working together with higher ups and higher people. It's very part of life. Now, when you put Pluto in here, just to say for the last you will, about 15 years, if you will, this is the time where it's exposing and opening up the catacombs of everything that might have been, and the key word I would say is inauthentic or artificial in the way that something was being constructed. If there was a corrupt business, it was being formed in that Pluto in Capricorn season, that shows the power of corruption. It is a lesson on a societal basis of showing the power of when something is out of integrity, out of line, if you will. And I know if you look at the inflation, if you look at the budget, if you look at however you interpret government officials, that there's a fixed system and people can't even exit the system and we're all stuck in the system, if you will. That is very much that time period. Hitting, if I may, a critical mass when there was this big solar eclipse in 2020 around Christmas Day to January 12th of 2020. So December 25th in 2019 kind of began this. January 12th, I would say, is when this cycle entered. And funny enough, that's right around the time that we find that COVID was kind of either created or unleashed or however. Now, for anyone that believes this or thinks it's controversial, if you will, Pluto in a Capricorn is symbolistic to a group of extremely wealthy power people in the back room in the high skyscraper making deals that are going to affect the rest of the ants. And you can take that or leave that as however you want to look at. But I've been looking at that and reading about that. And if you go back to even the last time Pluto was in Capricorn for a brief moment, we're looking about America and the American Revolution on feeling the tyranny of the monarchs and other power figures that have controlled the people to be a pond colony for the sake of whatever country. So in the way of that Aquarius is, Aquarius takes on this next sign after Capricorn to say, hey, enough is enough with the system. We want to liberate ourselves and come into contact with the ordinary people and bring salvation or freedom, if you will, in the new and innovative ways that people can be themselves. And so to not go too far off a tangent and stop me, Dylan, if I go too far, but like most famous Aquarians are Abraham Lincoln, double Aquarius, literally freeing the slaves, being the first country to literally abolish slavery in the world. I mean, please, if we got any other data, please get me correct on that, right? But and you can look up all these different figures. Of course, you got your Michael Jordans and Michael Jacksons and stuff, but they break walls, they break paradigms on the way things have been done. I think that's key to look at. Well, once we reach the end of this cycle, I think, if you ask me, and I think a lot of people, at least the American people spoke, if you like it or agree with it or not, I think it's very fair to say that there was enough of feeling stuck in the system. Billionaires are getting richer, people are getting poorer, the inflation's out of whack. We're just in a hamster wheel of the system. We cannot break free. Enough is enough, you know?
Totally,
And
totally.
so this is kind of representative of the end of that cycle where it hits a critical mass and it's ready to gain the lessons and change chapters. And so when you talk about the last planet on the clock that hasn't been here since the birth time of America, it's very representative of this interesting rebirthing process that is taking place for America itself, but also its connection to the rest of society. And I could go into another hour talk, man, about America's disposition with other countries in the world and its representation. But I will say that America loves to be a trendsetter. It really is one of the newer. It's very Aquarian in that way. We do things different. We're a little bit of the rebel, if you will. We kind of have our scientific ingenuities and we try to go to the moon first. We have an Aquarian energy to America, if you will. Um, and so I just want to name that. And when Pluto comes in this new sign, it's a whole new territory. And there's a part of the piece that might be a longer conversation, but I want to say this is that it's really fascinating that even if you want to look at it, believe it or not, that Pluto entered Aquarius somewhere in 2024, went retrograde as we know in the astrology community, and then here in 2025 on January 20th, when Trump was being inaugurated, is that moment where the Sun and Pluto do what's called their conjunction, and it's basically birthing or beginning that new cycle for the next 16 years. And so, however you want to look at this, that is something really revolutionary as far as just an astrologer's study or the point of view of what's happening out there that you can see with the naked eye. That this is a season of we're going to revolutionize and change every other way that's been inauthentic or anything that's, if like, Capricorn also rules the foundation to a house or the piping underneath the house. If there's a leak or there's wood rot or there's mold or something, Pluto, sometimes you can experience that as a shocking experience of like, hey, we need to gut this out, we need to clean this out, we need to change and restore balance in this way, we need to decompose it to help it become fresh again.
Hmm.
So far, how do you feel with that, Dylan? I mean, just for
Yeah,
that
so
chapter. Yeah.
it's interesting to kind of boil down that, especially kind of marking the day. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, what has already happened so far cannot be undone. The
Mm.
transparency is naked. There's a nudity to the level of corruption that people have now seen. It's funny to think that everything that people have already assumed and or they had conspiracy around, oh, the media is paid off to create narrative, and then that narrative drives societal norms, and then that's what builds the culture, is this astroturfing, this laundering, not just money laundering, which is very explicit to what we're seeing, but the laundering of information, a regurgitating of information, a top-down approach to news. And when you look at society in general, people, at Thanksgiving dinner, people are disagreeable. Not everyone agrees on, they have different ways of looking at something. They're like, oh, we should do turkey at this time, and then the game starts, and then here, and someone's
Totally.
like, no, we should do turkey after the game because like whatever. The point is
Let's
that
not
the
even do
way,
turkey. Let's do holiday ham. Yeah.
yeah, like there's no agreement and usual circumstances in society. And I think, if I find it interesting that when the news media duplicates itself and essentially writes very similar articles, has a narrative, they're the same exact verbiage, maybe mixed around a little bit, but from hundreds and hundreds of news organizations. And when you realize something like that, we just found out, now we can track the money going back to, oh wow, the genesis point of the narrative starts with Politico, New York Times. Like, I'm specifically naming these because they were
Please.
listed in this accounting. So it's like, oh wait, that narrative was driven there, but then it goes down into this top-down approach, like, oh, Yahoo News, Washington Post, like, and so you start to kind of get this like recycled version of it, right? And I think that what people have now witnessed, again, who those are who awake. We could get into the people who are still asleep, and or they just still hook, line, and sinker believe everything they're being told by the media, which is unbelievable. That awakening is happening faster and faster and faster, but a lot of these people kind of just are almost left to the wayside, and are not a part of this. They're not a part of what we were, the majority of people now who have awakened, who have seen the writing on the wall. So yeah, I just think that you can't undo this transparency that has already occurred, and it's interesting that it takes, these characters that I've mentioned before are more akin to anti-heroes that we witness in comic books. I've had this discussion with Ricky before, to think about, like, an anti-hero in a comic book is like a Wolverine, a Deadpool, and even a Batman. They're looked at, the Batman, if you realize, in Christopher Nolan's series, he's looked at as a vigilante. If you remember, like, the news media, there's all this
Hmm.
sort of debate about Batman, and he's a bad person, he's not a hero, but then it's like this weird thing where he isn't a perfect guy, and he has his ways of doing things, his methods that are questionable, right? And I think that that's
Uh-huh.
that's what we have to look at, I think, with like Trump and Elon, these two very imperfect characters, but they're
Totally.
serving a purpose, if you will, that is, for whatever it's worth, is truly revealing things that have been rotting the foundation of the country. And I wouldn't say it started with 2008 because a lot of people think of Obama or whatever have you. This has been obviously a 60-year cycle that we're ending as well. So there's probably a more macro version of
Yep.
it too that's been kind of just this unfolding. But it seems to me the way I look at it is the spoiled rich kid mindset inside of these bureaucracies that have had unchecked power. And we're talking about people making 200 to 300 to $500,000 salaries from a
Hmm.
money laundering operation that has been robbing straight from the US Treasury. Like imagine like your entire livelihood and your entire existence is astroturfed and your purpose is like bullshitting, and then you got paid from the taxpayer. So you're just essentially stealing money from the government. And it's like a glorified version of welfare is kind of what we've witnessed. So yeah, I just think it's something interesting to consider, like what you're talking about. The foundations are being kind of interrupted, and I think of Aquarius, and I think of yeah, different thinkers, people who are opening a paradigm, or like they're not gonna fit into the Capricorn box. They're gonna kind of, it's like funny. It's the sign right after Capricorn. It's interesting, but it's the almost feels like the most. It's an air sign, right? So it's like opposite. It's like free flowing, and oh, just let's hear that person out. Actually, let's not block them out of the friend group, like, or just more or less just really open minded to the future. And I feel that way right now. I think there's a level of speed that's been going on of so much happening at once that we're actually even recognizing the other part, which is, oh wow, change can happen very fast. It doesn't have to be
Mm,
this slow rolling, pressure building process that feels like it's taking forever. We're going into
right.
this, we call it whatever you want astrologically, but we're at this time frame right now, just with that flip of the script. Things are speeding up. So I don't know if there's like it's like, oh wow, that happened so fast. How come things haven't been so fast in the past? And you realize like, oh, it's just everything's just in a molasses, a state of slow rolling, and it's crazy. So I think I went black there, but it's my camera. Let me figure that out really quick. Carry
No,
on
do
from
you
there.
think? Honestly, Dylan, no, I love everything you just said. I mean, change can happen quick. I mean, that's in just to speak on it, Aquarius is about like the lightning turning on, the eureka moments, the you had just had an idea, when you're like, oh my God, I just hit an idea. That's in a very what we say Uranian Aquarian kind of ideology. And there are certain people that help us bring that together. I mean, it's really about democracy is what Aquarius is representing, because as much as there might be a subgroup of even that 1% or 5% group of people, they are a human being. And that's the one thing, is that everyone has their quirks. And that's something that we're going to kind of get a lot of spiritual medicine from this kind of time. If you want to look at it like from however you want, there's a time to be refined. Let's be honest, the Capricorn's like, if you have a big boss meeting or working with, ambassadors, diplomats, you want to be fine tuned, you want to be refined, and you want to present yourself in a certain way. And there's a level of understanding that we're all a human being and we're all unique and diverse in our own certain ways. And I think our society has so much judgment that things need to look a certain way in the way that we've always known them. It's almost ingrained in the way that we navigate society, or even ingrained how we navigate as Americans, because there's a lot of vibrato I've noticed within Americans that's not in with, is similar to the French, or to Spain, or even maybe the UK in certain ways. And just to pick some examples, so I just want to name that there's some paradigm there that's highly breaking. And I'll totally admit with you, Trump and Elon are definitely little zany, crazy characters in ways. And I got to be honest, they're also two of the most powerful people on the planet, if you will. And there's just a level of that I guess I'm looking back and looking at with no judgment upon anyone that tries to present themselves in this super refined way. Guess what? That world's over. Like that Pluto Capricorn world is over. I think people's skill sets and the diversity and how they come together, the life that they're living is going to be way more valuable than trying to look at all these other caste system kind of perspectives, if you will. So I'm not saying that will go away, but there's a huge part of that that the world is so diverse. If you're an online influencer or something that's very, I'm laughing, man. I see that one kid on YouTube, he's making $1 million doing toy reviews. Who are you going to judge who is more successful?
I think that Ricky's phone might have died. Oh no, he's back. Sorry, go ahead, Ricky. You just blacked out there
Yep.
for a sec.
Yeah, so I just think that's a paradigm that's going to really shift as we're moving forward. I think really there's a lot more of just witnessing to discover people a lot better. And you're going to find that I think which when we get into this, I have the second planet or one other aspect I want to talk about is Neptune. And now there's two talks I want to talk about with you on this, but the first thing is it's at the end of its cycle here. And just understand that what is representative with this astrological planet is Neptune is everything you've ever seen or imagined, every movie, every TV show, every poem, every song, every piece of art, anything you've ever dreamed, your dreams, it all comes from this planet Neptune. So to keep it a little more grounded, not get too metaphysical, because it is highly representative of that, is you want to comprehend that Neptune also rules the subconscious patterns, especially when it's in its home sign of Pisces. It came in this sign in 2010. It came mid halfway in 2016 when Trump and Hillary were being elected. And now it's on its final miss, 28 degrees, about to finish complete its sign in here in Pisces. So I will say there's a huge journey that this is representing. But the first thing I want to talk about before we get into the juicy nitty gritties is that this is learning a level of compassion and acceptance. And I want to really break that down because even for someone like me who truly, and I'm going to just say this, has a lot of opinions and hated Trump and a lot of other things upon his way and misconstrued of this and that, you got to realize there's someone out there that's triggering you. What does that say about yourself and how you're going to actually redefine and constitute a transformation within yourself? There's a level of compassion that everyone's a human being and everyone has their own way of navigating that. This is a major message that this planet is doing to us. And simultaneously, it's also exposing the illusions of how you've seen or perceived certain things. And so the media is home to Neptune and Pisces. Anything you see on the media and it gets inside your mind and you're like totally zoned in and that's what you're believing and that's what you're thinking and that's where it's bouncing off the emotions or insecurities and feeding that perception. And so you can have a good relationship with that or a bad relationship. I mean, some people, when we watch a fantasy movie such as Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or whatever, you're having a beautiful experience if you're connecting with that movie in a certain way, and it leaves an impact on you that you might even constitute in your own day-to-day life. That is this kind of energy of Neptune. And so when you get it to a mass level in its maximum power in this sign of Pisces, it's been between, I'll repeat, 2010. So this is going to complete to 2026. That also has a huge power in how it affects the subconscious mind for hundreds, millions of people. And you got to understand, like you said, Dylan, the perception of America is not just for us. I mean, the rest of the world's watching at how we've played the game. And a lot of people you could be experiencing this intimately for the one-on-one person and in their relationship, at their work, in their day-to-day life. But when this Neptune comes to the end of a sign, and when I just want to say it's ruler here, so you got to understand in 125 years, stay with me, that at the end of its cycle, it's at peak, breaking through illusions, breaking through whatever you thought was, like lifting the veil. And it does bring you a little bit to the compassion of God. It really wants to bring in, I almost said it the other day, like your connection of what you interpret as the Holy Spirit, which is just fully loving, fully compassionate, and has no judgment to really anything. And so those things might not be connected if I lost your audience for a second, because it's that widespread, it's that diverse. But I speak to this because it's so relevant that I'll be honest, in the work that I do, when Neptune's at the end of sign, if someone has a really fixed in belief system and a way that they've interpreted life, um, this is a huge alignment for psychological breaks or losing your mind, or having, feeling like you're lost at sea. It looks like chaos. It could feel an
Hmm.
internal world of chaos, an internal emotional world of chaos if one is not using this constructively or has not taken responsibility for their own emotions and perceptions, because it's very easy for mass medias to manipulate an individual, if you will, when Neptune is at high parameters. You can just get the lighting just right or change a few words, and you can change the reality of a situation to skew it into an emotional connection. And that's a lot of what's happening here, but it's at the end of the sign. And I would tell you that right now, this 2025 is basically revealing the veil. I think what Dylan said was like the Wizard of Oz, like, thinking it's this big Oz behind the glass, and then it comes out and there's the little green man or whatever's coming out from behind the curtain. I mean, this is it. For me, it's like I was making a joke with Dylan, to be raw for a second. I'm like Michael Jackson, that one meme eating popcorn watching this stuff, because I'm just like laughing at, or not laughing at anyone in particular at all, but just like the insanity to see how this work has played out over the last 5 years. It's completely astonishing and a complete gift in my regards. Just want to hold space if you have
Yeah,
any
I mean,
questions on
no,
that,
yeah, I
Dylan.
was just thinking that. Yeah, it's very revealing and it's a racket what's been happening, and I think on a mass scale, it's helping other people recognize maybe some of the dark skeletons in their own closet. I was gonna ask you if, given what you think right now, what should people as an individual, what should people be focused on? What should people avoid right now, and then what should
Mm.
their focus be?
It's funny. And not to give too much more, you can catch my channel if anyone wants to really go dive deep with me on kind of these astrological placements. But I will say that right now, there a lot of things are moving into North Node, which is where the soul wants to go, I'll say, and it wants to be with Neptune. So it wants you to connect with Source. It wants you to take off the illusions of what you've perceived yourself or others to be. It wants you that if anything is triggering you or driving you crazy or pissing you off, if you will, you want to really recognize, where do you hold some of that. Like, this is a really near time, and like kind of let go, let God, and find yourself to actually simplify life. I'm going to make it very simple, is like, go be happy. Like, go focus on what is your truth, instead of trying to project on everything outside of you and the external, because that's just going to get more chaotic, more wild, and more out of control. Now, that's super intrinsic and super, if you will, metaphysical.
Just a second there, yeah, he just blanked out there. But this thing about live streaming is you get all these issues that I feel like people just are able to cut out and edit. Go ahead, no, keep sharing.
No, go for cool. And so and one note to add to, like, what should we not be doing, if you will, is just recognize right now there's a revolution at hand and the way things are changing. And this is going to be moving forward for a long time, 16 years, if you will. I will say, try to give more presence to the way that you express yourself. This in this full moon is, let's bring it full circle. This full moon and Leo, which is my message, if you will, is it puts pressure on the things we have in Aquarius, which is like, don't give your power so much to AI. Don't give your power so much away to what the collective thinks. Don't give your power away to what everyone else is doing. Find your intrinsic sense of self and plug that into the collective. And that's going to be a huge challenge over these next 16 years, where some people are going to want to, that is the detriment that can happen in the sign of Aquarius, is going with the crowd, going with what's trendy, going with what's cool, instead of kind of stepping out, being yourself, and kind of not giving a rat's ass about what people think, to be honest. And there's so many paradigms of that shifting. And I mean, if you love them, hate them, or whatever you will, like, I think some of our world leaders right now are kind of kind of embodying that right now, where it's kind of like I'm not here to be liked or loved. I'm here to be myself and do what I need to do. And as an astrologer point of view, from the top looking down, I think it's fair to say that like take the understanding of other people, take and understand that, AI is a simulation of thousands of resources of people's intelligence, very Aquarian, that you can kind of access and get some kind of help. But I really encourage people, like, if you're someone also that's very introvert, and I'm not dissing introverts. I know that you guys' brains work very different in the way that you want to express yourself, but we're moving into a very extrovert world. We're moving to a very extrovert world because Aquarius is still a masculine kind of positive sign, if you will, that everyone needs to know they need to find a skill and express it out and connect in the world. This isn't about disconnecting. I want to be safe at home with my toaster and all the old things I've known. That old world prior to what COVID represented, that's over. That's over. And so I think it's much more about being excited, in ingenious. And I'll be honest, if you catch my channel, The Infinite Soul, we drop into this too, but a lot more about kind of, a lot of that kind of pseudo metaphysical work about like, people are accessing levels and states and lifestyles that we've never thought of or dreamed of that are available right now. And I think there's something to say where like you said, Dylan, we don't need to wait around and let the molasses grow. Like there's something you can do right now, and do not, and I've just learned this the other day, is do not let theory stop you. I think that's a huge thing. Oh, well, I got to learn this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And like, I'm going to call BS on that, to be honest. And right now there's a level of just actually being in the flow and go out and go try it, and extrovert, let yourself get out of your mind, so to speak, is where you can get trapped. So that's for an individual state. But I think there's a lot of traction that's getting forward if you're getting geopolitical and stuff, because there's no, I definitely encourage people to think before they leap, but there's a level where I think people are more free than they give themselves credit. If you feel trapped, it's kind of a very spiritual statement to say, but like check within your internal world and stop, like stop and do nothing. We are in such a dopamine state. I'm going to add this last thing, is due to social media, due to the internet, due to everything. Another thing with Aquarius is ruling the nervous system, that we can get constantly dopamined out and overstimulated in 7,000 different directions. You pick your verse. I think it's really important to come back to kind of a little bit of a let's stop, let's relax. And something that Neptune teaches us is actually do nothing, in the sense of the Zen master at work, in the sense of the artist just stumbling upon a painting. Like, there's a level I think we need to rediscover who we are in some of this. So I love having those deep intrinsic thoughts, but to bring it back to some practical notions, man, I think it's really surrendering everything we thought we knew about ourselves right now. Because with this kind of corruption exploiting itself, and now it's facts, like now it's not even speculation or conspiracy. A lot of those facts, I think, are a level where we need to take a deep breath, ground ourselves, and look at like, holy smokes, what has really happened? And for me to have seen this kind of from at least like the foreshadowing of the next scene in my perspective, it's been a lot more enjoyable. But I know that for many individuals, this has been a rattling time. That whatever someone has lived in, there could be some very, very intense radical reconnections to oneself. So, but I don't think anyone's free from saying that we can all learn a thing or two and surrender, pray, forgive, let go, that let the past be the past, and you don't need to create another cycle. This is about changing cycles. This is about breaking through them. And so when you see a doorway and you see an opportunity, my advice is don't wait. Turn on those, turn on that fucking electricity, man, and go out and go get it. So,
Yeah, yeah. I feel
yep.
like on a collective level, it's like, with what's being revealed, it's more of like we're seeing a cancer, like we're very, very sick as a society to allow and tolerate this level of corruption. And it's going to be, we're undergoing surgery. It's like a heart surgery,
Whew. Oh,
It's
yeah.
not, yeah, it's like a really deep thing. and we have to be very, very careful because this is a really fragile moment for the country, for the world too. And I guess just to finish things off, I'd love to think about what's kind of in the forecast, and like what's coming up, like spring. Like, how do you feel? What should people be paying attention to? What should people be investing in? Maybe what should people be taking their investments out of? Like, what could be something that could maybe blow up? I know we got the AI forefront happening. We have a lot of transformation there. Technology is about to be huge. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding going on as well in the other countries, like in Eastern Europe and Ukraine, when the war ends very soon.
Hmm.
And then in Israel and Gaza and these conflicts around the world. But like, how do you see things as you forecast out, probably the next 3 months or so? What are some things to pay attention to?
Phenomenal questions, Dylan. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer all of those exactly, but I will say if you're talking about investments, I've had five predictions go right with a lot of these Aquarius transits where the stock market and Bitcoin have just gone insano. And particularly even with Pluto in that alignment with Trump's inauguration, I saw Bitcoin, you know, so there's a lot of those, but it's hard to say with some of the other alignments, Uranus and Taurus. We think it's this thing, it says something else, and we think we're putting investments here, and it's going to be something else. That is literally one of the placements that's totally unpredictable. But my point is it's something that's progressing society in the form of technological advancements. So Aquarius is representative of cryptocurrencies, AI, um, space travel technology. Like, it is representative of the expansion and using the intellect to connect, especially AI units that are helping people language, like language videos where you can take me and literally interpret me in Spanish, speak with my own vocal structure, and literally get me speaking Spanish for to help a collective group of people. That's super Aquarian, if you will, in that way. So, that's just some free nuggets for
That's
anyone that
gonna
has the
bridge some
inquisitiveness.
language things. Yeah, some language barriers are gonna be broken
Yep.
down. Yep.
The veil of disconnection is getting less, not going to be there. You're going to be able to connect with almost anyone. And so now we are stepping into a different market, and you're going to understand that cultures are so different from you that you need to recognize that it's not just about America. You're going to be working with so many different cultures. So there's something about that like everyone's so unique and diverse in that way, just to bring that back. Some things to forecast is that there will be a lot of shifts, I would say, around this April, May time. And they're not permanent, but they're kind of beginning these new cycles of new embodied, like, kind of where all this kind of structural detox is happening, if you want to call it that. I would say two major planets, Saturn and Neptune, will start moving into Aries, which is a really new defining place of where can we dream that we've always wanted to be. And there's a level of cycles that are finally ended, hopefully, that you can start now embodying a new sense of self. And so that's really exciting for this 2025 coming into April, May, I believe. I don't have the software with me right now to get exact with you, but that is a part that, look at these moments of right now, is purifying whatever it is of your past, letting go of, maybe it's calling up somebody, or calling, or getting complete with certain things, or looking at yourself, at your flaws, at what I've done in relation to other individuals. It's a very, if I may, it's a holy kind of time, especially this February into March. March specifically, having eclipses in the sign of Pisces, with now the North Node and Neptune in this case, is the you do you have major influence in the way that you show up energetically. If you're showing up and you're being angry and vile and judging and being aggressive and everything, and everyone has their own zones of this, if you will, this is kind of that holy water moment of kind of let go, release, surrender, if you will, because I'm going to be honest, you can't really, it's not fair to shame people, if you will, or shame yourself, if you will. And I hope this resonates for whoever it reaches, but that is very quantitative for what is happening in March. And it could feel like a dream. It could feel like life has become a dream, or what is even happening. Like it could be like kind of surreal, and just not getting hung up on the little things, where oh my God, I didn't do this. I'm getting anxiety because I have to do this and do that. And it's like, actually, like, like God's like, I can actually say, if you're taking the actions and showing up and having that internal love, this is very simple, rudimentary, spiritual stuff, very Buddhist, if you will, is you design your reality. If you're focused on it and you're doing the actions, God's taking care of a lot of people. And I know that can sound like a bold statement when there's so much chaos in the rest of the world, but I think that there's on a major scale an enormous amount of things that are kind of coming full circle. And so, within that statement, I actually foresee things getting really better and a lot better, but it is going to be a split. This is the key thing. There's a split in the collective. No, you have complete free will. You control your own perspective as much as you are able, as you would allow. So, I think being more real with yourself is going to be the major forecast moving into the spring, where I see summer being pretty powerful and big changes, and being very quantumly changed by September. So 2025 is kind of like poking our head through the veil of the great new land that awaits us, if you will, and still kind of maybe going through the clearings or the kind of the checks with ourselves, looking at our entire not only history of ourselves, maybe in our ancestral history, connection to our country, connected. It could be, this is so vast and out there that anything could almost happen as we step into this new version of thyself. So I hope that lands and that makes sense to the viewers at home. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll probably wrap it up there too, and just recognize that we'll, Ricky and I have discussions at length all the time about different things. So we'll probably have him on more regularly
Oh yeah.
as I kind of have a more of a mobile setup now. It's better, so I'm able to get to more podcasting and more fun. So yeah, I mean, I think that kind of there's so much more to share. I think, and also just to know that there are some great big changes happening. We can embody these changes in our lives for ourselves,
Oh yeah.
and to recognize where we can make improvements is it's just huge. It's self-reflection, and I believe also it helps to have our institutions of power be rebranded and
Mm,
renamed, and imagine a world where the institutions of power are actually forthright in the evolution of humanity, and they're not just thinking about themselves. And at the basis point, even if they're not selfish people at the top, they're lazy. They literally don't have any progressive thinking. They don't actually progress towards anything. And it's not to say we want to outsource our power to institutions like that, but
hmm
it is a positive thing, I believe, to see and witness our institutions creating changes that are going to be better for us. And to recognize that for whatever reason, some people are big rule followers. And if that means somebody like an RFK Jr. has to get cancerous chemicals out of our foods or something and ban it and make it illegal so children don't get diabetes at 12 years old, like that might be a good thing. And so it's just
Just
sort
might.
of, like that's what's happening. And so while we're individually making great changes, and I think that a lot of people are awakening to it, it's going to help the entire collective when I think people are not eating garbage food anymore, right? Or they don't even know they're doing it. Like they don't know Doritos are fucking full of cancer shit. Like they don't know that. So
They're
it's
not.
it's just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like there's some positive things that institutions, when those institutions of power start to make changes or have an upheaval, if you will, that's what we're going through right now. So the status quo is desperate to hold on and to convince you that they've been looking out for you. They're like the toxic ex that's looking at you like, we've totally been taking care of you. But it's like, no, I have receipts. You've been cheating on me for 20 years. And it's just like, that's what's happening. And it's like, I got the nude photos, the dick pics,
Yeah.
and you're
Yikes.
looking at this and you're just like, wait, no, that's what's happening. And then this is the desperate status quo that's like, no, these institutions are like they're reeling. They're just like, it's a screech. And it's like, yeah, we're going through that. So, yeah, it's really crazy, man. And I think that, but to empower ourselves as individuals is the most important thing. Our foundation is built off of what we individually can do. That's my big thing. You know, it's never, the matrix doesn't matter who's in control of the reins of power. Even if it's good, well intentioned people, you still have, you know, the ability to make changes yourself, right? And to be able to lead a beautiful life, you know, lead your families and things like that. So that's kind of the, any last minute thoughts from you on that, on anything?
I mean, amen to everything you said, man. I mean, as far as I'm a huge advocate for clearing the health market. Of course, me and Dylan have a huge background of working with a nutritional company and all that. So we really passionate about the health, just to name. But you're right, man. There is that huge taking the veil off and looking at things as they are. And definitely getting a reality check, but like you were saying, man, of just like, having a level of forgiveness, self-awareness, self-personal responsibility for the way that we navigate. And so there's just so much to learn from this. I think there's so much from a spiritual perspective to a practical perspective to a societal perspective to a government perspective. Like there's so much here. So I'm totally delighted and thankful to that you got to have me on here, Dylan. I mean, it's just always a delight, man, and sharing some of our conversations with the brothers and sisters back home. But just much love, man. Total thrill.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, we'll probably do this again next week and have a show more regularly, everyone. So really looking forward to everyone tuning in and appreciate you guys who have already listened this far. Yeah, we'll call that a wrap. See you guys later. Peace.
Thanks, man. Cheers.